2007, Miami, Florida. Not far from the ocean, there was a small house where they lived. A quiet place with salty air drifting through the windows, the distant sound of waves at night, and a porch light that always glowed after sunset. It wasn't a rich life, but it was peaceful. And for a long time, it felt safe. They lived the kind of life people quietly envy. No public fights. No obvious cracks. Mornings that began with the same coffee mugs, evenings that ended on the same couch, soft conversations about work, bills, and the future. They had been together long enough to move in sync, to finish each other's sentences, to believe they were past the stage where surprises could hurt. He worked a regular job, came home around the same time every day, kissed his wife on the cheek, and asked how her day had been. She always had a story. A coworker. A client. A small complaint. A small laugh. He trusted her. Completely. That night, after work, he didn't go straight home. He decided to walk along the waterfront. He told himself he just needed air, space, time to slow his thoughts. He didn't know where the urge came from. It came from nowhere. Or so he believed. He walked along the water, watching the lights reflect across the dark surface of the bay. Boats moved slowly in the distance. Couples passed him, talking, laughing, living. Then he saw her. At first it didn't register. Just a familiar outline. A way someone stood. A gesture he had seen 1,000 times. Then he heard her laugh. He slowed down. She was standing near the railing. And she wasn't alone. A man stood close to her. Too close. He watched them exchange a few words he couldn't hear. Then she leaned forward. And she kissed him. Not a friendly kiss. Not a mistake. But the same kiss she once gave him when she said she loved him. The sound of the water disappeared. The city faded. The world narrowed to that single image, his wife's hand on another man's chest. He didn't step forward. He didn't shout her name. He didn't confront them. He simply turned around and walked away. His face stayed calm. His steps were steady. But something inside him went very quiet. That night, he lay in bed beside her, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathing. She told him she loved him. She kissed his shoulder. She fell asleep. He said the words back. And every one of them felt hollow. He didn't cry. He didn't shake. He didn't feel what he expected. There was only a cold, clear awareness. He didn't want explanations. He didn't want arguments. He didn't want a divorce. He wanted the feeling to stop. From that night on, he lived two lives. The man she saw was the same man as always. Attentive. Calm. Present. The man inside him was already somewhere else. Somewhere darker. Somewhere where lines no longer mattered. Days passed. He watched her routines. Her habits. The small changes he had never questioned before. And inside his silence, a decision slowly took shape. What happened later was never fully understood. The police would eventually call it a tragedy. A chain of events. A case built on evidence and timing. Behind the scenes, someone had quietly guided that evidence. Not loudly. Not recklessly. But just enough that every trail, every suspicion, every unanswered question slowly pointed in only one direction. He had made sure the weight of it all would fall on the other man. They would later say she had been placed into her car, and that the car was found in the water. No clear witnesses. No clear explanation anyone could agree on. Friends would say he was a devoted husband. That he had suffered enough. That he could never be capable of something so terrible. And he never corrected them. His wife disappeared. So did the man from the waterfront. The city filled the empty space with speculation. With rumors. With theories. Then came the investigation. Digital traces. Witness accounts. Overlapping movements. Pieces that, on their own, meant little. Together, they formed a story the authorities were ready to believe. The story was simple. The other man had done it. He had motive. He had contact. He had been seen with her. He was arrested. The trial drew attention. Local news. Online debates. People choosing sides without knowing anything beyond headlines. He sat in the courtroom, hands folded, eyes lowered, playing the role everyone expected. The broken husband. The victim. The man who had lost everything. When the verdict was read, he felt nothing. No relief. No triumph. No satisfaction. Just an empty stillness. He returned to a home that no longer smelled like her perfume. No longer echoed with her voice. No longer asked him how his day had been. People visited. They offered sympathy. They said he was strong. That life goes on. That time heals. He thanked them. Months passed. He changed jobs. He moved to a smaller place. He learned to smile again. Learned what expressions people expected. Learned how to exist without attracting attention. On the outside, he rebuilt a simple life. Inside, everything was already settled. Then one afternoon, he overheard a conversation that wasn't meant for him. Two people speaking casually. Without emotion. About something that no longer mattered to them. The man who had been convicted had died in prison. No one explained much. They rarely do. Illness. Violence. Isolation. It blended into a single word. Gone. He felt his hand tremble slightly. That was all. No rush of feeling. No wave of regret. No sudden fear. Just a quiet sense of completion. That evening, He went home, made himself tea, and sat by the window. The city glowed the way it always had. Cars passed. Music drifted from somewhere far away. For the first time since the waterfront, his mind was silent. He lived on. He worked. He nodded to neighbors. He exchanged polite smiles with strangers. He stood in grocery lines and waited at traffic lights and blended into the background of ordinary days. No one knew who he really was. And sometimes, late at night, when the world slowed down enough to hear himself think, he understood something most people never do. The worst punishment is not prison. It is waking up every day and seeing in the mirror a man who once looked at betrayal and chose to become something even worse. Because some crimes don't scream. They sit quietly beside you. For the rest of your life. After that incident, the man was never able to find his true love again, one without betrayal or lies.